it's a bit of a balancing act, but quality is by far our number one priority. We need to do more, and this is, a collaborative effort.
Sometimes you do need to go away to realise what you're missing and reminding people how good it really is up here.
Hello again and welcome to The Northeast Edge, brought to you by Newcastle University Business School with me, Visiting Professor of Innovation and Enterprise, Charlie Holt, and co-host, Dr. Fiona Whitehurst, Associate Dean of Engagement and Place. We're both interested in regeneration, social impact, and growing the Northeast economy from the edge of England and trying to find those players who have an advantage in themselves. So we're bringing a series of guests together into the studio, and we've taken our studio to some of the guests to talk about Newcastle and region, past, present and future. So a very warm welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
So in this edition, we are looking at family businesses, often described as traditional, but the best ones are anything but static. So we're looking at two very different Northeast family businesses, Ringtons, the tea company rooted in doorstep delivery and customer loyalty, and Blueline Taxis, one of the region's best-known private hire firms. Our guests are Nadia Johnson, a fifth-generation member of the Ringtons family business who became a director in 2023. Nadia is focused on transformation, digital development, people, culture and values. And our second guest is Dr. Tom Shanks.
Oh, hey. Posh title.
Hey, you've worked hard for that. CFO and third generation family member at Blueline, whose doctoral research explored innovation and disruption in the UK private hire and taxi market. And I'm proud to say that they are both Newcastle graduates.
Hey, come on.
Yay.
Yes, fantastic.
Twice over.
Snuck to Durham,
I went to the
you?
dark side and came back.
I wasn't going to mention
I
that.
came to my senses though.
Yeah.
And still teaching here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's where my true allegiance lies.
Durham, also an excellent university.
It is.
We will explore what it means to join a family business several generations down the line, which my co-host also did.
Fourth generation.
How do family firms preserve their legacy while adapting to new times? How do they handle technology, succession, brand, customer expectations and new competition? And what can the wider Northeast economy learn from businesses that think not in financial quarters, but in generations? So a lot to cover.
A lot to cover,
So
yeah.
we'll get
We need
started.
to add in how to handle families as well.
And yes. Yes.
The tricky part. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get to that quite soon. So, question to you both. When did you first realise that the family business was not just a business, but part of your identity?
I think there wasn't probably a set moment in time I can refer to where the penny dropped, but I'm not sure what your childhood was like, but I remember early on when the business was a lot smaller. My mum was working on weekends, and Dad was in charge of still keeping the cogs turning at the business at work, but also childcare. And we were sort of roped along to the office with him. There was a Woolworths at the time on the corner in Wallsend where our office was. So he'd sort of be in the office and then he'd get the drivers to come and walk my sister and I along to Woolworths and keep us entertained on a weekend. But that office space became a bit of a second home for us. It didn't feel like we were going somewhere remote or isolated from our home environment. It just felt like an extension. We became very familiar with the staff, the team members. That really did feel like family, So I think throughout my childhood, it just became second nature that Blueline, the business, was home, really, as cheesy as that sounds, but it was just that extension of home life. So I think it was always not a penny drop moment, but always just felt whole,
I think probably quite similar, although I didn't get to go into kind of the Ringtons head office that often. I grew up feeling part of the Ringtons family, and I've got lots of cousins, aunties and uncles, and we are really close and spend a lot of time together. And so it was an extension of family. It was just, it's an identity, it's who we are. And Ringtons has a lot of family events. And so that was also part of my childhood, going to different family days with all of the shareholders and celebrating the business. And then like a customer, having the Rington salesperson turn up at the door and picking out of the basket. And so I've always felt really proud. And I can't remember when it started, because I think it just started from day dot to a certain extent.
Holt's Removals, we had stickers. We used to go in on a Saturday to the office because my dad picked up the post and he would give us the stickers.
Brilliant.
We'd have sticker books. They were colour coded for the different things, for the different Holt's Removals,
course, yes.
The boxes and then the colours and So we always used to
getting you to work from a young age, Charlie. Yeah.
The excitement was opening the letters with like a letter knife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the best thing about being in a family business?
There's a multitude of things. I think I remember Charlie once said to me when I was contemplating going into the family business or not, he said, it's a bit of a spectrum, really. It's either, working with family is either the worst thing ever or the most euphoric feeling you'll ever get. And there's no middle ground. I think when you hit that euphoric stage, that is so special. Working and spending time with your family's really valuable. And I think, sadly, when generations, pass away, you've got that lifetime of memories with them, which you might not get in another occupation. So that's really, really special. And that's what I would probably say is top of the list, that ability to spend good quality time with loved ones on a daily basis.
And that comes back to an issue about how you each entered into the family business. So, Tom, you really had a choice, didn't you, as to whether you would, that was a choice that you were weighing up.
Yes and no, Fiona, yes and no. I think, we were never pressured into joining the business at all. But sometimes that silence can weigh more on your shoulders than being explicitly told you have to join the business. We weren't ever told that. So the choice really was ours. You I think as well, growing up, you're involved in this business, even informally. And you realise very quickly that business provides a lot for you in your life. Opportunity.
At third generation, you work with uncles, aunts, and cousins.
And cousins as well,
and how many are in the business? So
in our generation, third generation, there is 7 cousins in total, of which 5 work in the business.
Wow.
Across different levels of the business as well, which I think we'll probably come on to that sort of thing later on in the podcast about roles that family members play in businesses and family businesses. There's a high concentration of us in the family business still. The generation before us, there was 3 main partners. And the next generation, there'll probably be far more than 7, So
yes.
It's one of those things, generation on generation, that expansion happens. And that can bring its own challenges and complexities as well as the beast gets bigger and bigger.
You've had to deal with that by the 5th generation.
Yes.
Do you know how many cousins, or how many are in that generation?
In my generation?
Yes.
I think there's around maybe 30.
Wow.
30 cousins, including kind of second cousins as well. And 5 of us work in the family business.
How many total headcount has the business got?
Just under 600 or around, dodging.
About 600, yes. Yeah.
Because there was quite a structured process, wasn't there, for you
joining? Here comes the therapy. Therapy session. Yeah, so there was a really structured process. So I didn't think I wanted to work for the family business. I worked for Barclays as a psychologist and had been there probably for around 8 years at the time. And there'd been a couple of failed succession attempts, and lucky for me, I was kind of pregnant and having children, and it just wasn't the right time for me. And it felt like the last opportunity. So my sister is and was responsible for the succession, and she employed a consultant who had a lot of experience in it, and they together created a succession process. So initially it started with an interview, which is quite funny. So my background, I worked in talent acquisition and all about identifying talent and creating assessments and, understanding in organizations how you flag people with potential to be leaders. So an interview really should be like a conversation. You make the person feel comfortable and bring out the best in them. This was the most formal, old school interview. Maybe that I should have realised that was a sign. So I had this really old school interview.
But of the 5 of you who are now in the business, there were 30 in your generation.
There's around 30 in the generation.
And how many applied?
10.
10 applied.
10. So the first round was a very formal interview. And then...
And of those 10, not all of them had worked in the business?
No, only one person had worked in the business. We have really strict guides around how you can work for the business. And so that's partly why a lot of us hadn't worked for the business, not me, but other people. So it started with an interview, and then we had an 18-month assessment process, which was working together as a team to present back to the board at the time, 18 months later, answering certain questions. So how much we'd pay for the business and what we were going to do in order to drive growth, and talking about the different growth engines and the investments that we would make, which really set us up for joining the business and then triggering all of the thought that we had put into the 18 months. So 6 of us did the final stage, so went to the 18-month process, and then 4 of us were picked to join the business. So a long process, and all 3 of us had babies at the time.
Right.
So after about 3 weeks, maybe it was 2 months into the process, I had my 3rd child, and it was COVID, and I lived in London, and I was homeschooling one of my other children as well. So it was really difficult. Yeah.
And is the plan for your business for family to manage it? Because that's another thing that happens in more generations, is applauding the meritocracy within the family, but also there has the potential that people who are not family could run it.
Yeah, so I think the plan is, as long as there's the right talent, then we would keep it within the family. And I do think that it's easy to underestimate the real value in having family running the business, because arguably they're not going to be the most qualified for the job. But there's something around motivation and passion and desire in that sense of responsibility that is very hard to have if it's not your family business.
And so should we talk a bit about the origin of your business? Because that's the 5 generations back, and how that's then flowed through. You're all shareholders as well as managers.
We're all shareholders. We have a family governance book, which my dad created probably about 25 years ago, which has rules, philanthropy rules, how you join the business. We have a minority shareholder agreement, therefore the business isn't diluted amongst too many shareholders. So we, stop being able to be agile and make decisions. So I think that's been really valuable, this kind of forced buyback of shares at a certain age. If you don't have a certain number of shares, then you have to you need to sell your shares.
So that of your 30 in that generation, not all of them will remain shareholders.
No, and already some have sold their shares back to the business. Yes. So I mean, this is the topic I feel most nervous about discussing, because I'm by no means an expert talking about the history, which sounds a bit crazy. So the business started in 1907. It was started by Samuel Smith and someone called William Titrington in Leeds. Samuel, my great-great-grandfather, worked for another tea company in Leeds, and he identified an opportunity to deliver tea door to door. They had an agreement. He had an agreement with the company that he could set up another company, but it had to be in a certain number of miles away from Leeds. So hence they moved to Newcastle to set up. And obviously with the River Tyne, that provided good shipping for them. And so they set up this business. And shortly after it was set up, I think Samuel decided to buy William Titrington out. And so he ran the business. He was very entrepreneurial, very philanthropic. He took all of the staff away on trips throughout the year, which we try and keep that ethos today. Survived 2 world wars, and did some amazing things for the community. And I really hope and like to think that we carry a lot of the values that he created and demonstrated today. And then the story just gets a little bit complex in terms of different people that took over the company. I think one died in a plane crash, and so then his brother took over. So then I guess the next generation I feel more comfortable talking about is my grandpa. So my grandpa and his brothers took over, and then my dad was the first out of his generation. And it's useful because he talks about how difficult it was taking over a business at the time which was failing, and he felt like it was his only breadline to provide for his family. So he had to turn the business around. And in a certain way have really difficult conversations with his dad, and kind of take over that business because he desperately needed the control to kind of make it successful. So
did he boot his dad out? Was that too graphic?
Yes. Well, I think maybe there were conversations around that, and his dad, my grandpa Johnny said, you don't want to work here. It's this business is failing. Go and find yourself a proper job somewhere else. And my dad is very modest and would say he's not very academic and he didn't have many options at the time. I would say that my dad is so entrepreneurial and innovative and just is wise and a great businessman. And actually, it was definitely the best opportunity for him. And so... Yes, so then that generation left and my dad stepped in, and then he has 2 younger brothers, my Uncle Colin and Uncle Simon, who followed in his footsteps. They naturally had a hierarchy because he was the oldest brother. Now in my generation, we're cousins, so there is a slightly different dynamic and less of a hierarchy, although
This is where the psychology helps, does it?
I don't know if it helps, or it's more of a...
birth order, I've been reading, is a significant part of how you show up in life, and with having but in my family business, the youngest sister, and I know you're the youngest in your birth order in your family, she's our chair.
Interesting.
She's my boss. Yeah.
And she's younger than you.
Yeah, a couple of years, but she's definitely cleverer though.
Yeah. So my middle sister, Julia, is our chair. She's a non-exec chair, so she lives in London, works 1 day a week. So that's an interesting dynamic. But I think because she's my oldest sister, maybe that helps. Although I am the baby of the family, but I'm the oldest cousin. So maybe it all balances out.
Fascinating. The cogs are turning in my...
Yes.
Yeah, our family business was founded in 1958. My grandfather...
Not starting as taxis.
It did start as taxis, but my grandfather, he'd been a prisoner of war in World War II. And he'd been captured by enemy forces. He was shot. But after the war, made it back to London. And he was working in London, met my grandmother, who was from Portsmouth. And they were running a national chain of tobacconists, which was their first sort of... It wasn't their business, but it was the first business he was involved with. National chain, very successful. I think it was on Park Avenue in London. He was managing the store there, but they were launching in Newcastle. And they said, well, you're a Geordie, so do you want to move back up to the Northeast and you can manage the store in the Northeast for us? He thought, yeah, we'll do that then. The store is where Marks and Spencer's on Northumberland Street is. That was the store, and they lived in the flat upstairs. And this must have been early 1950s, 55-ish, and he was just skint. So he had 2 kids already, my aunt and my uncle, and my dad, the youngest, was on the way. And he just thought, I need to try and make more money here. So he decided to save his money up and buy a car. And that car was an Austin Morris, and it had a thin blue line down the side of it. So that was the first ever Blueline taxi. He then, around a similar time, founded the Newcastle owner Drivers Association, which you might have heard of, NODA taxis,
right.
which doesn't exist anymore, but he was involved in that, and there was some disagreements with that business, and he just then focused on Blueline with his Austin Morris, and ran the business very well until he passed away. He passed away quite suddenly, and my father was quite young. So my grandfather, he ran the business along with my grandmother. They ran it together. Very different characters. So he was a big cuddly teddy bear. He'd be in the war. He'd seen the worst of life. And he really wanted to get the best out of life and give the best to other people. My grandmother, she was known as the Duchess, very regal and elegant, but also they nicknamed her the Führer because she was just hard as nails. And he passed away, and my grandmother kept running the business. And she was.
How old was your dad at that point?
So he must have been sort of about 23, 24 when my grandfather passed away, roughly about that mark. My grandmother then took ill. She had really bad arthritis. She was in a wheelchair, in and out of hospital all the time. But she was still running the business. Every day she was at work. And my father, he was playing rugby for the Falcons at the time. It was called Newcastle Gosforth, but he was involved in the game that opened Kingston Park. So he had his eyes on that career path. But he was getting a bit older, and he knew that wasn't going to last forever. And then our family are all farmers up in Northumberland. So he was thinking, well, he grew up on the farms and thought, I was going to be a farmer or maybe a police officer. He's never been diagnosed with dyslexia, but he cannot read or write at all. And he kept failing the police tests. So that wasn't working out too well for him. But all whilst doing this, juggling sort of the rugby, he was a doorman at Julie's Bar, a very famous bar in Newcastle, and Macy's before my time, but he was a doorman there. And essentially he then transitioned to become a full-time carer for my grandmother as she got worse and worse. So the final sort of 2 years of her life, he was her full-time carer, more or less. And still had no interest in taking over the business, but he'd had that exposure to it by looking after her. She sadly passed away when my father was 27. And again, at this point, he had no real intention of running the business. And I think a day or two after she died, he was in her office, cleaning out the office and, sorting things out. And the window was open, and he heard these two taxi drivers in the street, blokes in their 50s, 60s, who said, now this young lad's in charge. This place is going to go to pot. So, we best jump ship here.
Right.
And he just thought, I'm going to prove you wrong. But at the time he took over a business in a sticky situation. I mean, my grandparents had built the business to around, it's either 30 or 60 cars, but around that mark. They were doing a lot of executive work. I mean, we transported Diane Disney in 1978. Walt Disney's daughter. She came over to Northumberland in Scotland to tour around the northeast of England. And just a little side story, because everyone loves this story, but my grandfather, he chauffeured them around the region and for about two weeks or so. And every time they stopped off somewhere, they'd say, do you want to come in for a coffee or some food? And he'd say, no, very traditional. I'll stay in the car as the driver. And at the end of their trip, they offered him £20 as a tip, which back in 78 was a lot of money. He said, no, you've paid a fair price and you've got a fair service. So weeks later, this handwritten letter arrived from Disney, letterheaded paper from Diane Disney and her husband, who was a guy called Ron Miller. Ron Miller became the CEO and exec vice president of Disney for about 20 or 30 years. Wow. And they said, thank you so much for all you've done for us. And in lieu of the £20, which you declined to accept, here's a gold Mickey Mouse watch, which the rumor has it gives you free entry to all Disney parks for life. So they were doing quite well. They were winning this sort of work. And but when my father took it over, there was a disagreement with HMRC or whoever, and there was about £100,000 debt. And he, the courts were going, this business needs to either pay up or you're going to be closed down. And he sort of begged and pleaded. We had a very young accountant at the time. I think he was about 18, 19 years old. He'd been working for a law firm, and my grandfather liked him and said, do you want to just come work for me, on your own? And Graham is still our accountant today.
Wow.
Yeah. He lives in Germany now, comes over once a quarter, but he's still our accountant now. We call him the fourth partner of the business, even though he's not. And Dad and Graham just sort of begged and said, look, like, can you give us some time? You know, my parents have just died. I'm trying to figure this out. And he took it on from there. So, you know, he, again, is not academic at all, left school at 16 years old, no qualifications, I think dyslexic, but a brilliant businessman. So he, you know, grew to where it is today, which is we've now got over 1,000 drivers working on our platform, 85,000 journeys a week. We do all our, you know, standard you know, movement of passengers around the region, but also all of our public sector work with NHS, private sector, Newcastle United, and other clients like that. And he's grown it to what it is now. We've got the taxis as our core business, but then he sort of, again, built an ecosystem around it in properties, garages, insurance, car hires. So he's got this gut feeling, which I don't know how to sum it up, but it's like the man can see around corners, you know. He's got this gut instinct that is, you know, as he coins it, you know, he knows how to turn a penny into a pound. And if you look after the pennies, the pounds look after themselves, which is what he says. But he's got just good fundamental...
Would you say there's innovation? He maybe wouldn't describe it as innovation, but it's like there's a core business model, it's providing money, there are sort of adjacencies that he's then seen opportunity in. Is that how...
100%, and you definitely you know my dad very well, and you definitely wouldn't look at him and say he was an innovator as such. I think now we focus on innovators in the likes of, you know, Steve Jobs, and, you know, very forward thinking technology, and actually technologically he is very innovative. You know, my father, he was one of the first people in the 1980s to go over to New York City and look at the first ever computerized, radio computerized dispatch systems, so two-way radios. Before that was pen and paper, you know, and a telephone line.
Because your core business is now really a tech business.
Essentially.
I would say.
Essentially,
having been to mission headquarters in Wallsend.
We're very reliant on...
screens and apps and phones. Is it that people, you know, there used to be terminals or radio sets or whatever, but now it is a phone, because there's so much power in a phone.
Essentially, and you know, even in the last few years with the advancements in AI, I mean, we work with a development team out in Bangalore, London as well, and the technology that these guys are building with you know, the advances that are happening in the world around us is mind-boggling, really. And my father, despite being sort of, you know, a Geordie bloke, left school at 15, he's always been on the cusp of innovation. He's always been very forward-thinking, although you might not look at him and profile him as being that way necessarily. And he wouldn't profile himself that way, but it's a massive injustice to him because he's so forward-thinking with technology. Whether that was, going and get the first computerized systems, then, you know, these were big server racks that sat in offices. And
do you think it's been core to your survival?
Massively.
Because there are so many, like, we could get onto the taxi market, but Uber has kind of killed a lot of smaller taxi firms.
Yeah, I'm
but
sure
you have consolidated a position to be the number one in the city. Being sort of scanning the market, scanning the technology that's out there has definitely been a key to our success, getting ahead of the game. And he's been the person who's really driven that, which again is interesting from a family business perspective, because often you look at it and you go, well, the assumption is it's always the next generation that's going to be the most technologically literate or advanced or aware, or but in our case, you know, he's still excellent at that, you know. So hats off to him on that front. Have you got innovations in tea? That's also a challenging area, but you pack the tea, don't you? You have
So we have three areas of the business, and the Ringtons brand is obviously the most well known. And I think people don't realise that we also have a manufacturing business, which manufactures the tea for the brand, but also we have a lot of private label customers. A lot of the big supermarkets, we manufacture their tea and do really well, and that business is just as it's the same size as the Ringtons brand.
Can you name your private label customers?
So I don't know what I'm allowed to name, but Marks and Spencer's.
I like the Marks and Spencer's everyday yellow one.
Okay, well, the Marks and Spencer's Gold does phenomenally well.
Yes.
And Sainsbury's Finest range, Waitrose, and other ones that I can't name. And I guess the biggest innovation, and I think innovation's quite tricky because there's the small reinventions, or when you evolve or steal an idea, which I think can be underestimated because that's something that's so important. And then there's those one-off innovations which are few and far between, I'd say. And my dad, he is also probably dyslexic. I'm dyslexic. He wasn't diagnosed, but shows a lot of signs that he's dyslexic. And he also has this intuition and judgment and sees things that other people maybe don't see or need some kind of evidence in order to justify, and a lot of the things that intuition relies on, it's hard to evidence, but you just know. And that's tricky. In terms of the tea, the biggest tea innovation that came from my dad, and we talk about it all the time, and our USP is that we call it leaf lock. And at origin, when the tea is packed, we basically suck out all of the oxygen from the sac. So it means that the tea can't age when it's sat on the ship for 4 to 6 weeks, when all our competitors' tea is aging. It's got the oxygen in the air and it starts to age. And when our tea's brought back...
Is that a different type of sac?
It's a different type of sac because it's protecting the tea, and obviously it needs to prevent oxygen. So we suck the oxygen out and flush it with nitrogen to really protect the tea. And then when it's brought into the factory, we have 24 hours in order to open and repack the tea. So we produce the freshest tea in the country, or arguably around the world, because not many people or no one's really doing it. So that's a massive innovation. I think the challenge is that people, especially in the UK, are used to drinking stale tea, and our tea tastes different because it's fresh. But that's a huge innovation. We've got a massive loyalty of tea drinkers in Ringtons, but also some of our private label customers utilize that technology, and they also benefit from a huge loyalty within their tea category as well.
And it's always been a sort of question in my mind why you haven't launched your own brand on shelf, but I presume that's because you've got such big customers with the private label, the own brand at Marks and Spencer's, because are Yorkshire tea one of your kind of competitors? You couldn't do a Yorkshire tea, you couldn't do a Newcastle tea because...
I think we could. I guess it's how we would do it in a way that protects our current business. I went to a talk, I think it was at the Entrepreneurs Forum, and it talked about not being scared of cannibalization, and allowing your business to hold back kind of growth because of that fear. And I think that is kind of being played out to a certain extent, that our Ringtons brand is strong and it's a stable business. But if we want to go for growth in a significant way, people buy their tea in supermarkets. You can't get away from that. And we are thinking about how best to put our tea in more consumers' hands in a way that balances what we have and cherishes the business we have today, but allows us to grow, because we're hungry, the fifth generation. We absolutely want growth, and we believe in our tea and our product. And it tastes different, and that taste may take a while to get used to, but it is the freshest tea, and so we believe that it has huge opportunities. Knowing that the challenge is that black tea is declining from a huge base, but I see it as we can pivot from that. It's still a huge market share. So we'll see. I'd say watch that space, but whatever we do, we want to do it carefully. We want to consider how we're going to do it, and if we're going to do it, we're going to do it properly. We're going to invest and give it the best chance of success.
But we're not going to lose the Ringtons vans door to door anytime soon.
Absolutely not. I mean, the Ringtons vans are amazing in the sense that, we have great products, and it's not just tea, it's the biscuits. And the biscuits are really fresh because they're not sat on a shelf like all supermarket biscuits and all the different seasonal products that we do. The biggest thing is the relationships we have with our customers. And I just don't think that should be underestimated. It is underestimated. People want to see a friendly face, and loneliness is growing. And so I think that is kind of unique. If you think of the milk brands that are reappearing, Milk and More, and they're doing pretty well, but what they don't have is the relationship, because they don't usually see the customer. It needs to evolve. We're really leaning into convenience, and I'm responsible for technology, and it's been a bumpy ride. But we're working on relaunching a platform for our customers in order for them to subscribe and kind of do the things that you would expect to be able to do as a consumer, and involve or increase the convenience in the ways that you can buy the product from the doorstep and online. So that will be 5 years in the making, but hopefully launching sometime next year.
So building on that customer loyalty by making it more convenient.
Yes, and balancing the relationship and the tradition and the elements of our brand that we need to keep, the heritage, but at the same time, there's that balance between keeping the good things and letting go of the heritage that really, needs to be left in the past.
So we talked a bit about both your differing business models. All of them rely on people.
Absolutely.
You've got 600 people, you've got 1,000 drivers, plus HQ, all of those other functions. Is a family business different the way it manages? Fiona was talking about, perspective of generations. You've talked about both businesses having challenges that they might go bust, which would run out of runway, but you're in a good place, I hope, today. Yep. And you can see forward, and you could talk about a project that's 5 years in the making. How is it you think about the people aspects of your business?
I think there's definitely a balance there. I'm a psychologist and I come from a big corporate, and joining the family business, I was really shocked at the way that we managed people. And I think that there is a distinction between being a family and being part of the family business from a shareholder and family perspective, and actually working for the family business. And I know,
was that shocked into some good things?
No, mainly in a bad way. I guess it is amazing that we have such loyalty, and we've got families within families working for our business. And the loyalty and the commitment we have from our colleagues is amazing, and the relationships. I guess the challenge is that, this is harsh, but we're not a charity. We mean business, and we want to have a business that's performing and that delivers both for its shareholders, but also for those colleagues that work hard and that do a good job to create that security and reward mechanism. I think that the challenge with working for a family business is that you have people that have been in the business a long time, but maybe are resting on their laurels to a certain extent and not putting in that kind of effort that's required to do the job and also evolve, because we all need to evolve. And arguably you have a role in a business these days. You don't have a job. Your job title doesn't have the same boundaries as it used to. And so joining the business, I hired a head of people who was one of the best decisions that I've ever made, and we have evolved significantly over the last 5 years. And we're actually up for an award next week. Or actually, it's on Thursday for the HR Northeast. So it's an award for HR and technology. And so we implemented performance management, which would be a very normal thing for most businesses to have, role profiles, making sure.
So some of this was a bit of catch up, and the positives of management arriving who haven't been always in the business.
Exactly.
And you've seen things, you said you worked at Barclays in psychology, and so processes that may not have kept up.
Exactly. So playing catch up and recognizing that we needed to motivate, reward, engage people in a different way. Because, I mean, Ringtons is a business that has always wanted to do the right thing, and we still do. But sometimes we can look insularly or inside rather than externally and realise that we're just not quite up to date with what the expectation is. And so that's what I'd say the fifth generation have brought to the business, that we've brought good practices and we've reached further in terms of what we want to achieve from a people perspective.
And in terms of HR, because we can switch to taxi driving, attrition has not been your problem in Ringtons. You've had lots of loyal people, and maybe you want to energize the business with new stuff. You talked about that growth for the next generation, and maybe the team needed evolving.
Yeah, I mean, we want to give people the clarity, the role expectations, and give them the opportunity to be successful, the best chance of success. We have had a problem with attrition for our doorstep salespeople, and that's something that we've been able to manage over the last couple of years, and now it's absolutely fine. And in the factory, we had a problem with sickness, which is huge because you plan a certain production in a week, and if you can't rely on people showing up, it throws the whole thing out the water and is an absolute nightmare. That's also been solved for. So we're in a much better place. But yes, it's that balance of really cherishing and looking after the people that have worked for the business for a long time, who are doing a good job, helping the people that have worked for a long time for the business that maybe haven't had that clarity in the direction and the management that they've needed. And then for the people that maybe aren't in the right job, you know, treating them like adults and having honest conversations, being transparent and fair.
And is that something you feel didn't happen until the fifth generation came in?
I think it will have happened in a certain respect, but potentially hasn't evolved into the modern world way of managing people.
And somewhat a function of scale.
And scale.
If you if you're 200 people and you've all worked there for 30 years, maybe everyone kind of could cope.
Yeah.
If you're 600 and novelty and churn, it'd be challenging.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think just times have changed. The business has grown, and it needed a bit of a fresh pair of eyes to say this is working great, and you know these things need to change.
And moving to 1,000 people in the taxi world is kind of known for lots of churn in the seats, and but you only win as a business if you've got the drivers.
Exactly, yeah.
So
we're very supply-side reliant. From our HQ perspective, like very similar positives, lots of long-term members of staff, which is brilliant. I think it really helps with the culture, the family business heritage, the storytelling. But at the same time, it does pose those challenges.
Tom, how many people have you got at HQ?
Internally? Oh, God, I mean... I'd say across our call center operations, we're looking at probably 60, 70 people. Our bespoke, like dedicated transport teams, there's probably about 10 there. We've got a garage with 10 mechanics. We've got management. So you're talking probably at least another 100 people there. One challenge we've had, which is, and you've touched on this, which is, getting people to keep up with the times, not rest on their laurels. We've seen, as we mentioned before, these massive advances in technology. And for us, talent acquisition has been a challenge. I always say, a graduate in Newcastle University might be very bright. And if they get offered a job for a shiny ride-hailing company in London on, £29,000 a year, they'll probably snap their hands off for it. If we offer the similar job with actually probably more responsibility, more opportunity for growth, on more money, but because it's in Wallsend or Newcastle and it's for a local taxi business, and the framing is slightly different, we just can't quite attract that talent. So this has been a challenge for us. I mean, we're doing 85,000 journeys a week, so we're not doing that on pen and paper anymore. The tech's quite complex, and even for our internal sort of dispatching teams, they're highly skilled. They're analysing a lot of data. They're solving problems on the spot. They have to be very, very quick with what they do. They have to be good communicators as well. And attracting that talent isn't easy. So that's been a problem for us in terms of how we try and reposition the business, maybe from a shop window perspective, and trying to attract that talent in. But it is still proving to be a problem. Then from the driver side, you're right, 1,000 drivers, driving around the city, that again poses its challenges. And the dynamic there has changed massively over the years. And we're almost wrestling with our drivers to keep that relationship stronger more than they are. I think a lot of our drivers now, they've become so used to this gig economy way of working on platforms compared to what it used to be like. And they're quite happy to kind of, log into an app, sit in a car, do their job and go home and have no engagement with us. From a business modeling perspective, that can do us some favors because they take less of our resource. But also it's important that we still have enough contact with them to, they need to buy into the business. They need to know what our values are and how to deliver the service that we want delivered. So we have rules. Every driver that we'll probably turn away 10 drivers a week that inquire to start and join our fleet. Everyone who does has to have an in-person interview. We have to assess them and we put them through our own sort of stringent tests. And the reason we do that as well is there was a huge amount of deregulation in our industry. The regulation in the private hire and taxi industry is complex. There's over 300 local authorities across the country, all that run their own independent set of taxi legislation and policy. So in the Northeast, Blueline is an operator registered with 7-8 local authorities, however many there are now. With every one of them, we're registered as an operator. So we can pull drivers from all different areas. But the challenge there is they all are trained differently by the local authorities. They all have different requirements they have to adhere to. And that paints quite a complex picture for ultimately a singular service delivery. Because the end consumer, the passenger, they don't understand this, complex picture in the background. They just think I'm booking a Blueline, when one of the major ride hailers arrived in Newcastle circa 2014, bizarrely Newcastle City Council decided to completely deregulate the process to obtain your taxi badge as a driver. There used to be quite a difficult test you had to pass, and that all sort of went. The reasons for that, we can probably make some inferences there. I don't want to be accusing anyone of anything, but that led to a deterioration of the quality of driver in the trade, right?
Because the bar was lowered allow more people in.
Exactly.
On the basis that more drivers helped clear Saturday night rushes and things like that. And the dangers of having too many.
Not even that, just for revenue. Just for revenue, Charlie, to the local authorities.
Right.
I think if public safety was their issue, they'd be doing far more. And we do nudge them a lot on this. We push quite hard. We try and lobby the local authorities and even national government. We're pushing for a set of national standards across the country. We think that'll help with enforcement across the country. But yes, that's provided a huge challenge to us because naturally, if you have those 10 drivers a week that are applying to work for you and you're turning them away, they're going to go to a competitor, who might accept them onto their fleet. And then it becomes that numbers game in terms of supply and volume. So it's a bit of a balancing act, but quality is by far our number one priority because one rotten egg can totally disrupt a whole organization. Managing all those drivers is tough. We try and push the standards as high as we can, but some of that is outside of our hands. And these drivers now, in terms of the gig economy, they're wanting to work for multiple platforms. So sort of pre-COVID and pre-ride-hailing companies, drivers would work for one company, i.e. Blueline, and they'd commit to that company for a week at a time. And at the end of that week, if they weren't happy with that, they'd go and work for another company and they would do this merry-go-round, and often that was because different companies had these incentives on. So I'll go and get 2 weeks free there and I'll come back and they'd play the system a little bit. But generally then it was down on the fleet to actually deliver them a good service, make it worth them staying with you and keeping them sticky to you, which was where our sort of verticals came in. So We've got a property business. The model was very much inspired by Bourneville and Cadbury. This started in 2007.
You have houses for your drivers.
Yeah.
Wow.
So this started in 2007 when there was the crash, and a lot of our drivers came to us and said, "Well, I can't afford my mortgage. I'm going to default, and the bank's going to repossess my house. Is there any chance you can buy it off me? Can you buy it and I'll just rent from you, because I'd rather have you as my landlord than potentially lose my house." And for us, that was quite a good business model, because actually, we know you, and you know us. There's a good relationship there already. We know you can afford the rent because we know how much you earn. And then we thought, well, actually, we can then give these people a good quality of living. So we across our property portfolio, we charge way below market rents. But our ethos there is we'd rather have the house occupied by someone long term who cares for it as if it's their own property, and then they're not stressed a bit by having to make ends meet. So with verticals like that, the property business, the garages, the car hire, we sort of become a one-stop shop where these drivers can come to us and they've got everything they need.
Both your businesses have grown from, dare I call, mom and pop businesses. First generation, a couple, or a father and children, dare I say, sons in history. My family business was started by my great grandfather, but financed by my great grandmother. How do you divide? Do you divide the divisions with a cousin? Because you guys are both sort of in leadership. Are you delegating to cousins? Are you peer group? Is that a challenge for you? Does the property business have cousin A, the car servicing and maintenance cousin B? Yeah,
so in our business, going back to sort of second generation, so my father, my aunt and my uncle, again, my father was the youngest, but because he'd sort of been caring for my grandmother, he kind of knew the most about the business, and I think then it was sort of left to him to kind of take it on. And over the years, my aunt and uncle have had sort of, ultimate trust in him to build the business, and proof's been in the pudding. He's done a very good job, so they've got no reason to doubt that.
But sometimes, if I was a cousin, and
this is where the picture gets
uncle's doing it, then is it a good resource to rely on them, or is it because our business? I'm the only one in the family in the business at the moment. I'm like relieved not to have. It's definitely have to deal with my nieces and nephews. But
it's definitely where the picture gets more complex. The more people you bring into it, and the more dynamics between siblings, cousins, etc. So in my generation now, like I say, there's 5 of us that work within the business, 2 that don't. Out of the 5 of us, there's me and 1 other who are sort of running the business as such. The others,
what's your role and what's their role?
So like my cousin Ben and I, we are like a hand and a glove. We work. We're very lucky to have one another. And all the things that I'm very good at, Ben's not so good at, and vice versa. He would argue he's probably good at the things that I'm good at as well.
Healthy competition.
Yeah.
And how old is he compared to you?
Ben's older than me, so Ben's 3-4 years older than me.
So close in age. It's not like a 20-year gap.
Yeah, close in age, and we get on very, very well. Ben's
and have you managed to boot out, kick upstairs, retire? In terms of where are you with succession?
No, so we're very informal.
But your father and uncle and aunt are still very present?
Still present, yeah. My father's in the business every day. But he is getting very good at letting go of the reins. And we are taking more on. His philosophy's always been, I'm not going to give you a title. Show me you can do the job. Just go and do it. And then, it'll happen in the fullness of time. Which is sort of where we're at now, I think. The last 8 years we've been working in the business, Ben for 10, 11 years now, very actively. We've been trying to carve our own path and put our own stamp on certain areas of the business. And I think we've been recognised for that.
Just to jump in for the Rington side, are your uncles still in the business, or has there been a more conscious, is there a time part? You said there was an 18-month like Dragon's Den process. Are you now
nearly
directors, and are they stopping, or are they,
Yeah, so ours is really formal. It's been formal from the start. So we have a spreadsheet with the succession timelines. We have lots of core activities and when are they moving over to who. But really, we're at the point where we've got my Uncle Simon and Colin still in the business. My Uncle Simon's kind of sitting in the CEO position, although he would say that most of that responsibility now sits with the 5th generation. We're running the business. He retires in December. And then my Uncle Colin retires next June. So they are kind of sitting there as advisory, in theory, to advise and support, but not really to run the business. And then in terms of our responsibilities, they've been divided up. So I was responsible for strategy, business planning, the technology and people and culture, but we're now doing... Not that we didn't do the strategy and business planning together, but I was kind of driving that forward. I've let go of that and we're kind of doing that shared. And I've gained a much bigger area, arguably. So I look after all of our commercial customer relationships, all of our retail, but still have technology and people and culture, which is great because it means I can lean into the kind of manufacturing side of the business and kind of get a bit deeper in that side. But also I understand what's going on across the business because I'm in 2 functions that look after everything. And then Elliot looks after production and all of the kind of manufacturing side of the business. So me and him have healthy tension where I represent the customer and he represents the business and, efficiencies and production and all of that. And then Brigitte looks after the brand, the Ringtons brand, direct to consumer, marketing, product, procurement. And then Tom, the final 5th generation cousin, he looks after the operational side of Doorstep. And also beverages and coffee, who we have a very senior director looking after and running the day-to-day as well.
And we're trying to sort of, we're a bit earlier in our journey, and I think it's important everyone knows what's going on, there's transparency, and ultimately the end goal for our business, at least, or for me, because most of this will probably land on my shoulders, is avoiding conflict. This is probably my ultimate goal. I think, in terms of family businesses, often succession is triggered by death, and then you've got, you've got grief, and you've got finances, and you've got sense of worth or purpose, all in this melee, and that's when I think often nasty, sentiments can brew. Pardon the pun, but I think the key is to sort of set these things out in advance and almost work towards that transition whilst the previous generation is still there, like Ringtons, to oversee that and give their blessing to it. I think that's really, really important. So we're really looking at copying your model. Yeah.
The book that you mentioned, is it a secret tome?
No, I think we do. We share it for kind of certain.
You share it to
people.
other families, but not in. Does the company know about it and know its secret contents, or it's?
No, it's not shared kind of amongst the company because it's very much a shareholder book that has all of the elements that shareholder and family members would want to know and kind of gives that clarity. It needs updating. But it's done a good job so far and really protected the family from having some of the conflicts because of not having clarity. And it's easy to say that's not fair, you're being treated differently, and, to really pull out the key elements that could cause conflict and lay out the ground rules.
You mentioned in it as well about philanthropy and family businesses, I think, are very resonant, particularly in a place, in a region.
Yeah.
I think we all echo the importance of place and supporting the region. Can you talk us through some of the social impact aspects?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So this is an area that I've been a bit closer to over the years. And again, inspired by our founder, Samuel Smith, but also my dad is very much drove this forward with his brothers. And this is, whether it's entrepreneurial or kind of copying someone else, but we have endowment funds, so we don't want to just give to charity from our profit. We want to build funds that invest and grow over time, so we can give the interest back to certain charities. We have rules around the type of charities that we give to, because I think if you spread it too much, then you make less of an impact. It's better to focus on something slightly more direct and narrow. We work with a community foundation in Newcastle, so we have an endowment fund with them. We give around £60,000 a year to small charities. So we have a board in Newcastle, in the office, where we sit together and we decide on the different initiatives that we're going to give to. So we meet twice a year.
Is that colleagues and family, or just family?
It's just family. We have discussed having some colleagues on that, which, I think it would be a really good idea. There is an argument to say that this is about family wealth and what we do with the family wealth, as opposed to something that directly relates to the colleagues. And then we have three others. So we have an environmental fund that's the newest one, again endowment, and we give to certain environmental initiatives in the region. And then we have a tea growers trust endowment fund, so we give back to our growers, directly to them and those initiatives. And then we have a colleague foundation, so that's the Ringtons Foundation for our colleagues. So they're 5% shareholders, and colleagues do sit on that board. And we decide what that money's spent on. We have certain debt provisions to support our colleagues, to prevent them having to go to the bank or to get quick loans, and to give them a better rate. And we have a retiree committee, and so we have 2 events a year. Again, like Samuel Smith, we've got a summer event and a Christmas event that all our retirees come to.
Because you manage a fund for retirement?
That's actually not an endowment fund.
Right,
that's just from the Ringtons kind of 5% share. So I'd like to think that we give holistically back to both the region and broader charities.
And is that, you're very active in the region, and you're talking about policy and legislation nationally and locally, but also you're a significant employer. And
our strategy was probably spread too thin, as you've mentioned there. We were supporting a lot of charities. There was no real process to it. And serving so many customers daily, we were getting so many inbound requests for, can you even just sponsor my football team and whatnot? And you feel really bad saying no, because sometimes it's only a couple of £100, But we just decided, well, how do we put a framework around this to make sure we're using this money appropriately? And my sister, when she was born with a disability, and she was awarded an award called the Braveheart Award. Braveheart is a non-for-profit local charity founded in the 70s. Mark Knopfler's our patron. And essentially the charity is run by a group of trustees who every year we probably nominate between, I think it's now 2 awards a year, so up to 60 children per year with a Braveheart Award. And these are children who are facing life-changing illnesses, disabilities, sometimes terminal. And what we do, we have a huge award ceremony at St James's Park. We limo or chauffeur the children in. They come in their little suits and beautiful dresses. And if they can't make it from hospital, we'll go and see them in hospital. They get a Brave Hearts Award, and they all get a £500
taxi voucher.
Well, gift of choice. I'm sure taxis wouldn't be on the list, but a gift of choice. We decided to focus our efforts into that charity. It means a lot to us personally, and it's probably one of the happiest days of the year, but also one of the most heartbreaking days of the year when we're at the presentations. But then I met the Newcastle United Foundation a couple of years ago, just up the road here, at their site in Newcastle, and I was blown away by what they were doing as well. They touched on the fact that one of their programs was looking at mental health, and especially mental health around sort of middle-aged men. Of which we work a lot with middle-aged men. I just thought it was really, really clever what they were doing, and we've got some terrible rates and stats here in our region that we don't want to have, that we can't be proud of, and they're doing fantastic work to to combat those. So I really fell in love with the foundation. We do some stuff with the foundation now. So in terms of where their transport provider, and we give them sort of subsidised rates for helping them get people from the community into the centre and facilitate the engagement with their programmes.
Wow.
And as well, we do this annual trek now. I head out on Sunday to Mount Toubkal in Morocco, the highest peak in North Africa.
Wow.
Last year we raised £70,000 for the foundation, and this year hopefully we'll eclipse that. And next year it'll be Kilimanjaro. So I'm really enjoying working closely with the foundation, try and raise as much money for them as possible as well.
Yeah. Should we talk about the university briefly?
Well,
as we're all Newcastle University fans and alum.
Absolutely.
You've both benefited from that education. Your customers must be a load of students as well. Do you see the region benefiting from having such a lot of students here?
Yeah, massively. I mean, of course we do, and we're lucky to have Newcastle, Northumbria. We've got Durham not too far away as well. Sunderland, some fantastic institutions, Teesside as well. So we're very lucky in that sense. I think this isn't the university's job, by the way, but I think we need to do better as a region to retain that talent in the region once they've graduated, because they get well equipped here at the universities, and then there's some fantastic businesses in the region. I think there needs to be a bit more joining up of the dots to see how we can keep them here.
And I would say that one of our roles is definitely to make students aware of the fantastic businesses in the region while they're here. It may be, like Nadia did, that you go away to London, but I want everybody to know that they can come back, even if they don't have a family business to return.
Boomerang Geordies, as Charlie calls them.
Yes.
And is there more we can do to sort of make them aware of Blueline as a taxi service rather than...
I think it's even a bigger picture conversation than that. I think as a region, we haven't quite found our future identity yet. I think we still talk a lot about the deindustrialization of the region. And don't get me wrong, we're very proud of who we are and proud of that history. But I think in some capacities, it can hold us back as well. And I do just think that Newcastle should do, we need to do more. And this is, collaborative effort with, local authorities, businesses, universities, etc., to work together to see how we sort of paint that new picture of who we are, what we can be.
Is that your sense as well, Nadia?
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenge so it is amazing to have such two good universities in the region, and I think that the students definitely support, maybe not with the tea business, but saying that we're about to supply all of Newcastle University with tea and coffee.
Yes,
so,
Charlie and I are both drinking.
Exactly.
Drinkers, yes.
So watch that space. I do think there's something about retaining talent and showcasing what the region has to offer. Sometimes you do need to go away to realise what you're missing. And having lived in London for 15 years and then coming back, I just think, wow, I can get to the beach in 12 minutes. That's like such a huge thing. And even the weather, people assume it's really cold up north and the sun doesn't shine. Well, actually, that's not the case. We don't have high rainfall here. So I think that there's more that can be done in terms of reminding people how good it really is up here. I think talent's difficult. So I would say that we don't struggle so much to put a job advert out and attract people. The Ringtons brand is strong, and as we're going through a bit of an evolution, which I think people will be seeing, it's an exciting company to be part of. I think that the human rights or the employee rights changes are a massive dampener, because really we can't take risks on employing people that haven't got past experience. And I'm a massive believer in identifying potential and growing it. But that's, at the moment, too much of a risk, as well as the cost of people, the amount of people we employ. I think it's kind of working in the opposite direction. And I feel really sorry for graduates, because I think it's making it much harder for businesses to invest in graduates and take people on for their first job.
And we're trying to do as much as possible to encourage students to take year-long placements and get work experience, partly so that those organisations can have not as maybe as an extended interview as you had with the 18 months, but it's almost like try before you buy, but it's not.
And even I think
possible.
a national conversation, because, and we touched on this in an event last week, we were at about sort of differentiated and decentralized tax at a national level, regional taxes. I mean, our technology is built in Bangalore. If you go to Bangalore, it is absolutely buzzing. I think Adobe's global headquarters is in Bangalore, because what Bangalore did was they slashed corporation tax for certain profiles of businesses. And I think as well, if our national government said, we're going to cut corporation tax for 3 years for businesses who deliver X, Y, and Z, there'd be huge inward investment, which would support that regional growth and bring in talent from around the world here. So I think, there needs to be some huge, conversations at a governmental level, because the needle, I think for it to shift significantly, it needs and warrants that. Not just us Geordies talking about how good the region is and how nice it is, which is great to do as well. But I don't think that's going to sort of push us too far forward.
We could talk all day. We could talk right up to your meeting. But some closing quickfire questions. So we'll do Nadia first with these 5 questions. What is one Northeast phrase, habit or attitude you love?
I think it's just the friendliness, having lived in London for such a long time, the warmth, the friendliness and the approachability of our people, it is noticeably different.
Now, you've already mentioned the weather, but what is one other thing outsiders misunderstand about the Northeast?
The talent. I think we're so entrepreneurial. We have, when you go to the entrepreneurial events, it's incredible how many businesses are founded here and female founded as well. So I think that's something that's misunderstood. And again, having lived in London, I didn't see that.
What advice would you give your 21-year-old self?
Trying to answer it quickly. I'm dyslexic. So education, I did get a master's and I did do pretty well in education, but it's been a huge chip on my shoulder that I'm not intelligent enough, I'm not academic enough. And I would tell myself that I have superpowers that may not lean in academically, that are massive and huge, and to kind of keep leaning into my superpower and have the confidence.
Because it is still awful that dyslexia is sort of associated with lack of intelligence. My son's dyslexic, and you have to keep on saying, no, it's nothing to do with intelligence.
The real world is fine if you're dyslexic.
Yeah.
School is not fine if you're dyslexic, and you get this drumbeat of you're in the bottom set, you're not very clever. The way you're measured is against things that don't give you the ability to really thrive as a dyslexic. The real world does.
Yeah. One Northeast business, institution or place more people should know about?
Oosburn, is that an answer?
Yeah.
I think Oosburn is so cool.
Yeah.
And I think, more people should know about that, especially students.
Yes. And one thing the region should be braver about?
I think we need to shout louder about everything we have to offer. We need to really be proud and not feel like we have to be followers, that we can actually lead and really showcase all that our region has to offer.
Perfect.
Tom, same question.
Yes.
A Northeast phrase, habit or attitude?
I like shy Ben's getting out. And I think I'm going to caveat that with, I think it's great to ask for things, because if you don't know, you will never get or never know. But you've got to bring value to that conversation as well. So you can't ask without bringing something to the table. So I think back yourself, believe what you can bring to the table, and then go out and ask, and you'll see what comes your way. Yeah.
And what do outsiders misunderstand?
I think what we touched on before, and you mentioned the weather, and I think that people just refer back to it's grim up north and the mines, and it's poverty stricken, and why would you go up there? I always say if Newcastle was on the south coast of England, it would be the best place in the UK, and that would be the nation's view. But because we're just a bit detached, I think people don't quite realise that, but we definitely are.
And I know you're only just over 21.
Oh, I wish.
Well, what advice would you give that 21-year-old?
So when I was 21, I got offered a job in New York City, working in real estate. It was a property management job for one of the huge skyscrapers on Madison Avenue. The job was accepted. I got through all the interviews and got the job offer. And then a certain president's visa restrictions put a bit of a spanner in the works. And I ended up then going into the family business because I was so far down the line with this job and about to move to New York City. I hadn't really explored anything else. And then Dad was going, well, you need some money to live. So what are you going to do? And I sort of fell into the family business that way. I think maybe I would have said to explore something else for a couple more years. I think early on in my career working in the family business, I did regret that, and I was quite resentful of it. It might not have even led me to where I am today. It might not have progressed me too far forward, but I think just not have that few years of resentment would have been quite good for me. Yeah. And
one Northeast business, institution, place that more people should know about.
I just love Northumberland. I love Simonside Hills and like Thropton and Rothbury. I tend to go down on a weekend and walk the dog. So, but I think Oosburn is another one. When I bring guests up here now to the region, I often try and go to the Oosburn. So yeah, I'm going to copy Nadia's answer on that one. I'm going to firm down on Oosburn.
What should the region be braver about?
I think, what I mentioned before about trying to pick an identity. That's maybe not just like football and not just what we were in the past, although those two things are hugely important to the region. What the football club is doing is phenomenal, by the way, and I think what they're going to continue to do is also going to be phenomenal. But I think we need another identity for ourselves, and I think once we figure that out and once we charge forward with that, it'll be hugely advantageous to us. Yeah,
brilliant. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been really fascinating to hear about your stories and the heritage behind that, but also to look forwards towards the future.
Well, thank you very much. It was a good therapy session, wasn't it?
It was great. Thanks for having us.
Feels zen
much
now.
better now.
Yeah. Got a lot off my chest.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.